And when you're first starting, especially as a solopreneur, and you're really more of a technician, it's like a one-to-one exchange, me and my client. When we bring people on, when I brought a couple of people on, it was like, oh, now I actually am responsible for other people. And now I actually have to have some bandwidth to love on them, nurture them, and do things for the business that are bigger than just me. I feel like that was one of my earliest challenges, was just doing that for the first time.
Welcome to Glow Up Boss, the business school for beauty entrepreneurs. Having trained over 8,000 women to build and run profitable beauty businesses, I'm here to share knowledge and skills to put you on the fast track to grow your business and glow up your life. I'm your host, Veronique Munro. With 20 years experience as a product developer, celebrity spray tan artist, and founder of multiple sunless tanning companies, I've launched products and methods that have become today's industry standard. This podcast is where you will learn what you need to build your business from the ground up. You'll hear from industry experts on how to build a thriving customer base, grow revenue, buy back your time, and create the freedom to live life on your terms. It's time to discover the boss within you. Get ready to glow up. When it comes to building a business from the ground up, there are a lot of things that one has to take into consideration, whether you're building a brick-and-mortar business, getting ready to launch your own product line, knowing how to build a community, how to do your branding, work on contracts, and basically everything that it takes is like not for the faint of heart, let me tell you. I am sitting here with Melissa Pruitt, who is known as a brow magician, a skincare enthusiast, and a lover of all things personal discovery. She is the founder of Melt by Melissa, a self-care studio, and Melt by Melissa skin and brow care line. Hello, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Glow Up Boss.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
How are you today?
Oh, happy to be here.
Are you ready to bear all?
I'm ready to rock.
So you've got an incredible skincare business. You do everything. You've got a brick and mortar business. You have a skincare line. You're getting ready to launch a podcast. You're like a woman who just does it all.
Thank you. I always say it takes one to know one. And I did my research, I did my homework, and it's really special to sit here and feel the mirroring of a woman who, for 2 decades, has done so much and really knows the ins and outs of what it takes to put yourself out there and put yourself on the line and take the big risks, and that it isn't for the faint of heart, but it is for those of us who are really operating from the heart.
Oh my God, I love that you said that, because it really is. It's a labor of love, truly, isn't it?
It is. And I think that's what makes it worth it.
100%. So I want to know what makes Melissa Pruitt who she is. Who is Melissa Pruitt, and what was your drive in getting started in your business?
That's such a beautiful question. I immediately, as you asked, I immediately had a flash of myself. There's one very distinct photo that I have in my camera roll, and it's me when I must have been about 3 or 4 years old. And I feel like it really encapsulates Melissa at now 35 years old, where so much of who I consider myself to be was there in that little girl. It's so obvious. She has a pink little hat on, and she has her baby doll, and I have clothes that I made myself from my older siblings' hand-me-downs because I was obsessed with everything pink, feminine, beautiful. I love to make things myself and almost create something from nothing. I love to kind of follow my own spark. And I just had this internal drive to be whoever I was. And I think so much of who I have become in my continual becoming is just getting back to more of that essence of who my soul came in to be, and remembering who Melissa really is, and then having the courage and the audacity to just share her with the world.
Oh my God, I love that. And you know, I looked at your branding, I looked at your website, and I see it. I see that little girl, I see all the pink, and I see all the genius creativity that's behind your brand.
Thank you.
Talk to me a little bit about how you ended up going into the beauty business.
That is a fun story because it feels almost like a complete accident. And also it feels like divine intervention. It feels almost like this orchestration of something I was meant to discover and accidentally fall into. So I always joke like, oops, I started a business. And it really does feel that way in a lighthearted sense, though my entire life since I was 6, I wanted to be a heart surgeon. And my parents, who neither of them went to college, they gave birth to 4 of us kids. And I come out of the womb and here I am having this huge, lofty, very specialized, masterful goal that I'm reaching for. And that was my sole pursuit until I finished my undergrad. I had one mission, one path. There was no plan B. And so much of myself at 21 was still connected to that dream, but actually stopped to ask myself why for maybe the first time. And I realized that all of the values that I was hoping to express by pursuing that were maybe not as aligned with that path. And I call that my identity crisis, my very early 21-year-old identity crisis, where everything is burning down because I have no idea who I really am. And I have no idea what I'm going to do if it's not this. It was pretty earth-shattering. And honestly, I was distraught. So I decided to move to sunny Arizona. I did my undergrad in Oregon, which it turns out is not very sunny. And I decided that I would do 6 months of soul searching. And that if I 100 million trillion% decided on the other side that I would go to med school, then I would be all in and I would never look back. And I'm kind of like an all in or I'm an all out kind of gal, even to this day. And in that 6 months, I experimented, I explored, I traveled, I tasted the rainbow. I worked a bunch of weird jobs, including I actually was a car saleswoman when I first moved to Scottsdale right on this road. I walked into a car dealership, told them they should give me a job. They told me they didn't need a receptionist. And I was like, excuse me, I actually want to sell cars here. I knew nothing about cars, but I convinced them to hire me because I sold the most Girl Scout cookies on my troop. And I told them I had 3 brothers growing up, so I had really thick skin. And they hired me. And I worked that job for an entire year before I decided like, okay, I'm clearly intrinsically motivated. It's fun and the highs are really high, but the lows were not really for me, and kind of the grind and the every weekend and feeling like it was never enough wasn't sparking the entrepreneurial spirit that I knew was in there. So at that time, I just so happened to be getting laser hair removal because I'm like half Chewbacca child. Like living in sunny Arizona, like we have our legs exposed most seasons. So I started getting laser hair removal at a place here in Scottsdale, and I saw the same woman every 4 or so weeks. We know this so intimately now on our sides of the industry. You really build these deep, meaningful relationships, and you may never see someone outside of that quick laser appointment, but something about her woke me up inside. And the more I got to know her and the more I got to ask her questions about her day and her life and her career, the more I saw that light that I really was searching for. So me being me, I decided, lasers are really cool. I could do lasers. And then I would get to laser myself all day for free. Just my logic. So I look up the nearest laser school. There's one right here in Scottsdale near where I live. And they had a start date the next month. I had no idea what aesthetics was. I used a face cream and that was it. But I signed up for the aesthetics program that then led into the laser. And the moment I got out of school, I got a job for about a month and decided I would start Melts immediately. So I accidentally joined the beauty industry.
So how did you come up with the name Melts by Melissa? Did you melt like something with a laser?
Yes, intentionally. But I actually came up with the name Melt because one of my degrees is in chemistry.
Okay.
And so, all the science, all the human sciences I loved, but I was trying to find a word. I think words really do create worlds. I think they're so powerful. And I knew, I'm like, it's like naming my like baby. Like you only get this one name, you know? So I put a lot of heart and soul into it. I still have the notebook where I was jotting out all of the things, kind of word dumping onto this page to find what stuck and like felt like it captured. I came up with melt because I knew as a chemist to melt something, I like to think of little bits of chocolate. We apply heat to it or energy to it. It softens into this more malleable state. And from that softened state, we could put it in a mold or create anything new from it. But what happens there is that we didn't add anything to it. We didn't take anything away. Everything that was in that substance was already there. So I really saw myself as being this chemist, this alchemist, and just really being the catalyst or the activator, if you will, of these transformations that I knew could happen on my bed. And so I knew Melt by Melissa was, you know, wax literally melts. It made sense. But it was more of that energetic alchemy that I wanted to bring to the industry.
That's amazing. I love that story. So you had the idea, you decided you wanted to go into aesthetics. What was your next step?
I got licensed. I realized lasers to me were actually kind of boring. It was like, okay, I just am like pushing a button kind of all day. It wasn't actually the thing that lit me up. Surprisingly, in school, I was the only person who loved waxing. I loved painting wax on people. I felt like I was frosting them up like a cake. I loved ripping their body hair out. And I loved getting to take people through what is typically perceived as an uncomfortable, scary experience and allowing it to actually be a comfortable, amazing experience where, dare I say, you look forward to going to your Brazilian.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm not buying it. I like the way you paint the picture, but you're like not going to get me on a bed, put wax all over my body and yank off the hair and tell me I'm going to love it.
And you would come back for more. You would come back in 4 weeks. I believed that. It was like I'm very much an idealist. And I really believed like, okay, if anyone could do it, it could be me. So I ended up just saying, well, I want to wax. Where could I go get the most wax exposure, training, and reps in, especially this like real value of mastery? How can I do as much waxing as quickly as possible? So I did get a job at a wax center. I will not name said wax center, but it was a very big corporate wax center. And very quickly, I realized I do love waxing. I do not love feeling like a cog in a wheel and like a number and like this cookie cutter sort of person in this experience. And I very quickly saw, here are the things I love and here are the things that I think I could do better. And here are the things that I think I could optimize. And here's how I could make it more me. And so I just started my own business and really just went for it, knowing that I loved waxing. And most importantly, knowing that I loved eyebrows. I didn't know that when I went to school. And they honestly, back then, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I'm like, back then, back in my day. And I already feel like, you know, oh, back in my day, brows were not cool. Brows were not really being shaped. And you being in LA, you know, there was Kelly Baker and there was a really dominant celebrity brow artist there. And there were a couple others besides, you know, Anastasia across the country. That was it. And sort of being a brow artist and specializing in brows was not nearly as common. We were not taught brows in school. We were just given our wax pox and our quota, you know? So I really loved brows and I just felt like I wanted to hone in on that one obsession.
So Melt by Melissa, was it initially a waxing studio?
It was originally just brows.
Okay.
And
wow.
Like just waxing brows. And then I expanded into more body waxing, which I was trained in and doing. But it was my brow clients who then wanted to just come and also get all of their other goodies waxed and then expanded from there.
That's amazing. So did you start out with your own brick and mortar business or did you start in like one of these little suites? How did you start out your brick and mortar business?
I definitely had a lot of iterations before I ever had my own brick and mortar. It's like the 7 locations prior to. And the first location was actually a little teeny tiny room, not much bigger than your bathroom. Truly, it was like 2 or 3 of your bathroom, teeny tiny. And I had a friend who had a suite, had this sliver of a room, and he offered to let me use the room for free because he already had an esthetician in there. And he would just kind of come and go as he pleased. He was doing Botox and injectables, and it was kind of his side hustle. He was a surgeon. So just sort of this like space. And he knew that I couldn't really afford yet to rent a spot. I was very much starting from ground zero. And I remember I started Melt with $816.14. That's what I bought in supplies with my wax pot and my little sticks and all my brow powders. And I remember that because it was so much money to me at the time. And I really believe that he was an angel godsend because I wouldn't have been able to go rent a spot day one. So I was allowed to work in that room 1 or 2 days per week. So it was a very dip the toe in start. And I shared this room with a woman who was in there more full time. And I did that for my first year. And then after that year, magically, this woman comes into my life and she has a room that she's looking to share with someone. And she was willing to let me share her room with her. And instead of paying rent, I would pay her a percentage of my services. And so that really allowed me again to sort of expand into it as I could afford. The doors just kind of kept opening and opening. There was also a period of time I lived in a 400 square foot studio apartment. And so in these early days, I was doing my friends and their friends and their friends of friends' eyebrows on my kitchen countertop in my studio apartment. And that's where, before I knew it, the friend would send a friend, would send a friend, would send a friend. And I was suddenly exploding with clients and taking a full book of clients out of my condo. It's like, okay, I think it's time. I think I could sign on my first room. And I did that 2.5 years into my business. So I started Melt in January of 2014. And by July 1 of 2016, I opened up my own 50 square foot room.
Was it inside of like one of the suites, or did you take a space in an existing business?
It was inside a suite. It wasn't a big mega salon suites, which again, at that time wasn't quite as prevalent as it is today. Mm-hmm. But I had a landlord who had 6 beautiful rooms in a building. And I got to move into one of those little teeny tiny rooms. And I spent my first night there. I remember getting my key. It was a Saturday. And I spent my whole night painting every single wall pink and decorating the room. I was like painting at like 1:30 in the morning, just so excited to have this room to myself and to have a real space. And I think that's when energetically, I really considered myself to have my own business. And meanwhile, I was also strength and conditioning, coaching people. I was working at a gym. And that's what allowed me to sort of teeter-totter, grow Melt. While it wasn't my primary source of income yet, it couldn't be. It took me a long time. But I finally resigned that summer when I moved into my room. It was a big moment.
So you were working in a fitness center doing personal training, coaching?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was hardcore. I was coaching CrossFit, and I was a competitive CrossFit athlete for many years. And so I was training people. And so, the chemistry and nutrition science background and all the health and wellness and athletics. So that sort of helped me to start Melt and eventually make it my full-time thing.
That's amazing. And what part of town did you start out in?
That was Old Town Scottsdale.
Okay.
So I was always off of Thomas and Scottsdale.
Okay.
And I sort of stayed around that like 1 mile radius. So it was like right in the heart of Old Town Scottsdale when I was sharing those rooms I mentioned. I moved into my own room on Thomas. And shortly thereafter, it was like once I made that commitment, once I burned the boats, if you will, and quit my coaching job, went all in on Melt, that's when really it was like the snowball had gone down the mountain and doors just started opening and we really started expanding and hiring my first babe and hiring my second babe and moving into a bigger room and moving into a bigger room and then opening up, kind of our first space. But I didn't open my brick and mortar until 2020.
So what would you say from the time you first started up until you went into your brick and mortar business, what would you say was your number one challenge in that expansion for you? Okay, I'm going to give you 3. Give me 3 challenges.
3 challenges. Okay.
I know it's too hard to let go. Okay, out of all the challenges, what is the number one? But you can do 3.
Totally. And to go back in time to remember at that moment who I was and where I was, one of my greatest challenges was actually managing both hats of really being full blown in expanding my own career as a service provider. And I was taking clients, in those beginning days, I was taking clients 7 days a week, morning till night. And at some point, I had to figure out how to shift that so that I could continue to grow the business. And when you're first starting, especially as a solopreneur, and you're really more of a technician, it's like a one-to-one exchange, me and my client. When we bring people on, when I brought a couple of people on, it was like, oh, now I actually am responsible for other people. And now I actually have to have some bandwidth to love on them, nurture them, and do things for the business that are bigger than just me. I feel like that was one of my earliest challenges, was just doing that for the first time.
Do you remember your first hire?
Oh, I remember my first hire.
Tell me about that experience.
It's a really fun story. Her name is Bree. She's an absolute angel. She's still with me to this day. And in June of 2016, I had a really special opportunity to go to a 2-day mastery academy. And it was the first time I was able to actually invest in my own personal development experience. Before that, I was definitely a YouTube universitier and really, again, intrinsically motivated. I was going to learn all the things I could about business, about leadership, about my services and my craft, but I couldn't afford to have a coach, a mentor, or go to very many trainings. So I did what I could. But in June, I had the chance to go to Robin Sharma's Personal Mastery Academy in Toronto, Canada. And those 2 days are truly some of the couple days that have single-handedly changed my entire life and really my entire beingness. And in those 2 days, we did beautiful journaling, dream setting, goals, setting things by certain days and certain times. And one of the things that I drew out in crayon was that I would be standing in front of this brick building and I would have my first hire by October 1st, 2016. And keep in mind, in June, I didn't even have my own room yet. So it's kind of like delusional, weird, very like spiritual thinking of just seeing this vision that was coming to fruition somehow, some way I didn't know, but I was open to receiving it. I opened my room in July. I'm chatting with a client, sharing, I might be considering bringing someone. Oh, I have a friend. Her name is Bree. She's finishing aesthetic school soon. I take Bree to dinner. I let her know that I will train her and mentor her until the day she gets her license. And the day she gets her license, she's officially hired. The day she got her license was October 1st of 2016. And it was just the most perfect, special moment. And she's truly been with me now for over 8 years ever since.
Glow Up Boss podcast is brought to you today by Infinity Sun. Are you an entrepreneur thinking that you'd like to start a new business that's fun, that doesn't cost a lot of money to start up, that you could do in the evenings and weekends and earn lots and lots of money? Starting a spray tanning business definitely checks off all those boxes. With state-of-the-art plug-and-spray proprietary spray tanning systems that require only one solution, you can literally choose 30 different levels of spray on the spray tanning system itself. Infinity Sun offers sunless tanning solutions that combine high-end skincare together with sunless tanning technology to not only create the most flawless looking tans, but also to improve the condition of the skin. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What a transformation, though, from your first hire. How many employees do you have now?
There's currently 16 of us, so myself plus 15, which is a little bit of a more intimate team for us now. But I remember pretty vividly every hire, every parting ways. And a lot of my team has been with me for many years. The youngest of my babes are about 1.5 years in, and most babes are 3, 5, 6, 8 years, which
awesome.
Is really special. I'm grateful for that.
That is. So, okay, so we got one challenge. Let's have 2 more challenges.
Letting people go. Yeah. letting people go was incredibly difficult. I remember my first firing experience most vividly because it was my first. And one of the greatest challenges that I continued to learn more than a few times was about really trusting my own intuition and really knowing when a chapter is coming to a close, and then having the courage to have that conversation and make that decision and know in my heart that what's best for one is best for both, which is best for all. And I spent, again, more than a few times holding on to people, seeing the best in them, which I think is one of my favorite qualities about myself, is always seeing the best in people and believing in the best in people, and also believing in the best while accepting the reality of what is, and giving a lot of love and space and grace and nurturing growth, while also being willing to part ways peacefully and with conviction. That was a really big challenge. And it was really, 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 really tough. Keep you up at night, not sleep, so many conversations, so emotional, so many times. And that first one was the hardest one. And it got a tiny bit easier and a tiny bit easier each time after that. I think that's a really big one for business owners and human leaders to face and to practice.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that leads me into my third that just popped up. This is a little bit of a vulnerable one, actually. And admittedly, I was with a girlfriend the other day, one of my best friends, and we just crack up. She has the best sense of humor, and she's really the friend that you call in like the best of times, and she's the friend that you call in the worst of times. And we FaceTime. We never phone call. We just FaceTime. And we were sitting on her couch having a little holiday catch up, and somehow we started talking about Yelp reviews. And we went back to the archives of Yelp reviews, and we watched my own personal growth, being able to receive rough, less than stellar feedback. And I will be the first to admit that back in the day, when I would receive that feedback, it would eat me alive. It was so tough for me to accept it, especially when it was oftentimes the public review without all of the ways I tried to help and make it right and nurture. And it was always when you're bending over backwards to do all the things you could to sort of do your best. And in my early days, one of my greatest challenges was responding in the highest way and not getting defensive and not caring more about being kind than being right. And it's taken me a lot of practice. And I'm proud of myself for that growth.
That's personal development.
Yeah. When we care so much, when our business is our baby, we do take it personally. It's so easy to say, don't take it personally. We take it personally.
It's personal.
It's so personal. And it hurts so much. Yeah. And also it's just part of the experience. So I think one of my greatest lessons was that 19 out of 20 people who come into your business that you do business with are going to be your people. They're just going to be your people. They're going to be the people that light you up, that fill your cup, that levitate out of your doors, that write you amazing reviews, that send you referrals.
Okay, I want to know what's in your wax. Just kidding.
A whole lot of love. That's it. That's the only ingredient.
That's amazing.
And that 1 out of 20 people, I say 5% of people, just won't be our people.
Yeah.
And they'll come and they'll try. And that's okay that we're not going to win over and keep 100% of people all the time.
Yeah.
And I think we give ourselves a lot of grace when we accept that part. That was a big lesson.
And I think when you're really true to who you are, you're really true, your brand is a real reflection of who you are, you're automatically going to weed out the ones that aren't for you. So it's like you create a net, and every now and again, someone will get through the net that shouldn't have gotten through the net. And that's that one that really isn't going to be your customer, right?
Yeah.
But your branding is so like spot on. And let's move over to branding, because I think branding is like a really important thing. But your branding is so specific that it would attract a certain type. And I'm not going to say repel, but quite possibly repel another type, which is, the mark of really good, strong branding. How did you come up with, I'm going back to you as a little girl and you're pink, right?
Yep.
Your branding is so specific. Talk to me about the way that you went about doing your branding.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition. And again, I said, takes one to know one, but I really believe like these cliches are cliches for a reason. When we say like attracts like, that's just the law of the universe. That is a law in physics. And so when we are the most authentic and when we can let that shine through, whether it's through an Instagram post, whether it's through a caption we wrote, whether it's through something we printed, that will magnetize and attract people. Certain people will be attracted and certain people will not be attracted. And so it does help to have a really strong brand identity.
Yes.
And I really believe that it being Melt by Melissa, well, my brand really was just an external physical representation of who I am or who I was at certain stages. And it's why the branding has also gone through her own rebirths and upgrades over the years. And, me being a sentimental person, I still have my first business card, which was absolutely terrible. And I made it on Zazzle, Zazzle.com, which was like this, these little tiny cards, and they were pink. And I made my own logo, which was a heart with the word melt in it. And that was it. And it's gone through so many iterations to be what it is today. But every single iteration was who I was at that time, where the business was at that time. It's almost like a real baby, like, okay, here's our early newborn phase, and here's our going off to kindergarten phase, and now we're a teenager phase. And so she's much more mature now than she was back then. But early, and for many of the years, again, I couldn't really afford to hire anyone to do my branding. I didn't day one have an epic creative agency like I do now. Shout out to ENC and my best friend, Elise Nicole, who is a creative wizard and genius and has helped me so much. We've worked together the last 5 years and the branding has just gone to a whole nother level together. And she's that person and her team are those people where I'll have a vision and I'll doodle something out on paper, but I can't go into Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator, graphic design mode and like have the skills to birth it to life. And I think it's so powerful when we have people who have that skill to say, this is what I'm picturing. And then they just nail it and they make it even better. Mm-hmm. So my branding took a lot of time to, number one, be able to afford like real professional help. And also with that to find the right fit. Mm-hmm. I went through a lot of rebrands trying, and sometimes you're just not quite getting it. You're not quite speaking the same language. The vision isn't there. And so just highly encouraging everyone to just be stoked. When you see something with your name on it, when you see something that you're birthing out into the world, to absolutely love it. And then it doesn't matter who loves it after that. It's like when we love it, the right people will love it.
So I see the pink. I see the melt. I see all of that. How would you describe your avatar, your client avatar for Melt by Melissa?
That's a great question. I would describe the avatar for Melt by Melissa as a woman between the ages of 12 and 985 who really wants to love on herself in the ways that are most authentic and meaningful to her. She's a woman who wants to walk into a space and absolutely feel the essence and energy and just sort of feel the good vibes, no matter what kind of day she had or what kind of traffic she hit on her way in. She really does value her self-care, and she knows it's not a luxury. It really is a love language. She's someone that knows that by doing that and carving out that sacred time, or having products on her bathroom sink that she loves to look at and that feel so good when she uses them, that alone brings her back into the best version of herself. And by doing that, she's showing up in the world as the woman she is most meant to be. And she's the woman that knows that radiating out that beauty is really what makes the world go round.
How did you come up with that?
I just came up with it right now. So I say woman, and I also mean anyone. We actually have a lot of men who come into our building, even though all the walls are painted pink, which is such an honor. I say 12 because we have moms who bring in their preteens who are just starting to get a little bit of fuzz between their eyebrows and just want to feel good about not having a unibrow at school.
Yeah.
And we have women of all ages and stages. And I just really, I believe the avatar is me. If I were really describing me today, I'm 35. I'm a woman who very much cares about self-care, self-love, beauty. I love to be rubbed down and loved on and loved up. And in this very moment, I'm so tapped in to my self-care because I'm pregnant and going to be a mother soon for the first time. And what self-care looks like for me is always changing and evolving, but especially now when it's like more alive than ever. And so the avatar changes as I change. But again, it's always just this reflection of me. And I see the women and the men and the teens and the great-great-grandmas who walk through our doors or who purchase our products. And I know some of them, even in different states all across the country. And I just feel honored that it's not a cookie cutter, slivered, narrowed person who fits.
Yeah.
It's really come join us, anyone, everyone, if you feel magnetized to whatever we're doing here. We've got plenty to go around.
I love that. And by the way, you're glowing. I don't know if it's your skincare routine or if it's your pregnancy, but you're just absolutely radiant.
Thank you. I hope it's a little bit of both.
So you're going you were in your condo, doing eyebrows on tables. You went into a small room, you shared a space, and then it came time for you to open your brick and mortar. What were the challenges for opening your brick and mortar business? So let's talk to all the aspiring salon owners out there who maybe, do lashes or do brows or do spray tanning, and they're in the suites right now and they're thinking, okay, now is my time. I want a brick and mortar business. What can I expect? What's the process for doing that?
Great question. I remember so vividly that moment when it popped in. It was like, oh, now it's time. And a little backstory is that I was in this beautiful business coaching program, and I was actually planning out almost a franchise model to have 92 locations worldwide, and have all of these spaces. And then it hit me one day that I'd built it all out on paper, but I didn't actually have the headquarters, the location one, that I would ever replicate and copy and paste to other places. So I was very clear on, okay, we're going to put all of that beautiful paperwork that's in a binder on the back burner, and I'm going to get very clear on what brick and mortar Melt by Melissa location number 1 looks like. And at this time, remember, I had moved into rooms and moved into rooms and moved into rooms, and it always showed up at the perfect place, the perfect time. But I would go in and I would make a space beautiful, which I think is one of my superpowers. Would go in, and even this little old building that's kind of falling apart, we would just make it beautiful and magical. But I never had the opportunity to build a space from ground zero, exactly how it was envisioned in my mind. So it was Christmas of 2018. And I asked 3 separate friends who did not know each other if they had a commercial agent. So, okay, I'm going to hire a professional. They are going to help me find this space. I know exactly what I want. From all 3 of those friends, I got the exact same person. I was like, that's my guy. I call him, he asks me what I want, and I say, hello, I'm Melissa. I am looking for a modern white building, freestanding. So it's not in a strip mall between two places, but it's freestanding and ideally on a corner so that there's maximum curb appeal. And it's a new building that has floor to ceiling black frame windows. There's tons of natural light. And when you look out those windows, you're going to see a lot of green grass and nature.
Nothing specific.
And there's going to be ample parking. And it's going to be between 2,000 and 3,000 square feet. And it's going to be long and narrow, not short and wide. And it'll be an open floor plan so that I can design everything on the inside exactly as I need it. So it will fit blah, 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 exactly the recipe of what I wanted it to fit inside. And I'd like it to be between these streets, and these streets. I'm open to renting a space or purchasing a building. Thank you so much. And he had the same reaction too. He's like, okay, I have my shopping list. I will get you a list.
And a can of white paint.
And he said, you get me a list tomorrow. And he did. And he sent me a list of about 30 spaces, some for purchase, some for lease. And instead of waiting for him, me being me, I look up every single one of those places on Google. I cross out all the ones that are an absolute no, and I highlight 12 spaces. And on Friday, a couple days after Christmas, I drive around and I drive to every single one of those 12 addresses. And I just know, like, right when I pull up, okay, is it even worth getting out of my car? I can see. Or am I going to get out of my car and am I going to peek in the window? And just kind of get a feel for what's around, what other businesses, what's the parking like. And I just cross them off. And then the very last spot I hit, I turn onto 75th and Indian School and I pull up to this building and the sun is just about to set. And as I pull up, my whole body lights up and I'm covered in goosebumps and I can feel them right now, just like right back to that moment. And I walk up to the space and I peek in the window and I just start to cry. And I just know somehow, some way, this absolutely stunning building and stunning space is going to be my space. And there was this big sign on the window that said restaurant brokers. And it very specifically described that they only wanted a restaurant. And I wrote them a letter, the landlord. I wrote the landlord a letter. I let him know who I was. I sent him my website. I let him know my mission. And he agreed to take a meeting with me. And this was my first like big girl meeting where I showed up and I had my agent and the landlord was there. He had his son who helped him on the project. He had his agent and he had his attorney. And we're sitting in this boardroom and I showed up with a 50-page PowerPoint presentation printed out in a book that I gave him to take home. And I showed him exactly what I would do in this space. And he agreed to rent me the space for the next 5 years. And that space was gravel. So it was almost like you can envision an empty parking garage. And I had the opportunity to build it out with designers and GCs and really create the space from the ground up.
That's amazing. What a story. There are thousands of homeless dogs in the pounds and shelters and running all over the streets, and not enough people out there to help them. Sprays for Strays is a fundraising organization that raises money through the sunless tanning and beauty industry to help all the rescues all over the United States of America pull the dogs out of the pounds and shelters, get them vetted, get their vaccinations, get them spayed and neutered, help with any sort of behavioral issues, and help to get them into their forever homes. Go to spraysforstrays.com and become a member or donate. Every little bit of support helps. Thank you to our sponsor, Sprays for Strays, for helping to save the lives of dogs, one spray tan at a time. I got chills.
It was a good one. And back to your question, landing the plane here, back to your question, I had no idea what I was doing. I was way out of my league, quote unquote, but I was able to step up to the occasion. And I had no idea what I was doing with construction and hiring a GC. And it was incredibly challenging. And that year was a very challenging year, 2019. And I learned so much in that experience, from the absolute gut-wrenching stress, surprise, nothing goes to plan, those types of moments throughout the year to get this space built out. And everyone told me that it takes twice as long and costs twice as much money. And I just chose not to believe them. Like, that's your story. I'm not subscribing to that. Thank you so much. I'm going to go about my day. And it took 3 to 4 times as long and 3 to 4 times as much money. And we opened January 2nd of 2020, just by the skin of our teeth, opened this space.
Wow.
So 2019 was at that point the absolute most challenging year ever. Just that build out. Anyone who's done construction on a business or their home, you know what I'm talking about. And then to open up your doors, your dream space where you've taken on this humongous 2,600 square foot space and hired people to expand your team. And then 2 months later to close our doors for an unknown amount of time.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And to really know, wow, this is when I surrender to preparing in all the ways I can prepare, and knowing that there are things you just absolutely cannot predict, unprecedented, out of your control. Figure it out. That was a big one in brick and mortar world, especially so quickly after we opened.
Oh my God, COVID. Mm-hmm. How long were you closed?
It ended up being 2 months, which now look, 2 months is kind of a drop in the bucket in our
but
timeline.
We didn't know, right?
But we had no idea. It started as the 2 weeks flat in the curve.
Yeah.
We reopened for one day, and then that day put the stay-at-home order in. And at that point, it was like, stay at home for how long? Are we going to open next week? Are we going to open in 2 weeks? Are we never going to open? It was just very moment by moment, day by day, so much unknown. And, I joke, if I knew it was going to be a set 2 months, I would have done something epic and gone on to, I don't know what I would have done. But I showed up to the studio every day, and I went in there alone, and I would just work in the space empty by myself and enjoy it as much as I could.
I totally get it.
Wow. You being in LA,
yeah,
especially, and I know you came here, during that time
and worked all the way through COVID.
Yeah.
So no, I totally get you. So what did you do during that time? So during the 2 months, you said you continued to work. Did you pivot your business? What did you do?
I did. I think there was a big part of this is a challenging time, and it was so hard, especially with my team not being able to come in and service clients. And so for me, I think of what's the opportunity here? I call it the WTOH. There's always an opportunity if we're willing to just ask that question, even in the deepest, darkest rock bottoms. What's the opportunity here? And I feel like that question, just something will present itself. So the opportunity for me was that I had set up an online shop just a few months prior. Just a little shop that I built myself on Shopify. And I was just sending a couple products out to some clients I already had. But during this time, all of our clients, our community was so supportive and so amazing. So one of the biggest things I did was I started doing Mondays with Melissa. And this is on Instagram when the questions box had just been released, very, very soon before that. And magically on Mondays, I would do a full day Q&A. And I would just get on and I would take people through a day in my life, and I would answer questions. And this was back when stories was very engaging, and these questions boxes, I would get more questions that I could spend my entire day answering. But I actually realized in that moment that so many people were asking me questions about skincare and skincare products. And at this time, I was really known for brows and microblading. And I didn't think people cared that much to hear from me about skin. But as a skin geek, chemist extraordinaire, it's I'm very passionate. And I think that finally had a chance to come online because of those stories. And our online sales just went absolutely bonkers. So our space has these beds lined up, and I set up I was like a Santa's elf, just all of the boxes, all of the bubble wrap, all of the products, all of the notes I would write people. And I would have my little shipping station. So I would go in and ship out product and ship out product and ship out product. And I would do these stories and engage a lot with our community who was also at home watching stories. and connecting virtually. And I also started offering virtual skincare consults at this time for the first time ever. And I had tons of people that would book these hour-long skincare consults, and I got to just geek out with them, and then I could make them product recommendations, and then they would buy things online. And so it was a really sweet time to try some new things on that people were really receptive to.
So what were you selling in your online store?
I was selling brow products, which we've had our own brow products, excuse me, since 2016.
Okay.
So we're selling brow products, we were selling skincare lines, we were selling body care products, wellness potions, anything that I love, I was selling online. And really it was whatever was on our shelves. I would just duplicate in Shopify and be willing to ship it.
Okay.
And so we just carry it at the mothership. And if people bought it online, we just package it up, write them a love note, send it off, put 2 pink starbursts in there. And that just really took off during that time.
That's awesome. That's really great. Wow. What a way to pivot. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the time, actually. I haven't thought of this so much, but that really was the time that I was inspired to start my own skincare line. So it was right when the mothership opened. I was carrying another woman's line for many years, and I was carrying lots of lines. As professionals, we have access to lots of great beauty stuff. I was carrying many lines, but there was one core line that I really, really loved, and I had the chance to wholesale it. And in February of 2020, I started working with a chemist and a manufacturer to start formulating my own goodies. And that also proved to be a really challenging time because during COVID, manufacturers were also pivoting a lot. And that proved to be a very challenging time to try to launch a skincare line. It did not come to fruition for years after that because of 2020 and 2021. But it was definitely during that time that it really proved to me, wow, I know I can birth these products, and I know that I can share them authentically because I'm doing it for other people's products. So I should definitely do it for my own products.
100%. I think I'm going to have you back on another podcast to talk about developing your own line of skincare products, because this episode is going to turn into a 2-hour episode. And if you look at the average time a person listens to a podcast, I'm afraid that this gold is going to be like wasted. People aren't going to listen. So I'm excited to talk to you about the developing of your own product line and everything that entails. So that's going to be definitely if you'd be willing to come back and be on another episode of The Glow Up Boss.
I would be honored. And thanks for letting me share a lot of lengthy stories that are really deep and meaningful to my heart. Thanks for asking such great questions.
And you know what? You're such an inspiration. And I know my listeners are just going to hang on to every word that you've expressed today. I mean, you're amazing, really, truly. So you have, how many locations do you have now?
We have 2 locations.
Okay. And where are they?
We have our mothership location, which is in Old Town Scottsdale, the one that I found that I mentioned.
Okay.
And we have Mini Melt, which is our cute little sis location in Midtown Phoenix.
Ooh, I love that. So what's on the horizon for Melt by Melissa?
We'll be launching some special new products this year. One of them is very near and dear to my heart. It's a cacao, so it's actually a consumable product. I'll be launching some new skincare products this year, and I'll be launching a podcast, as you mentioned. So hopefully sharing more and speaking more and telling more good stories.
That sounds amazing. I'm excited. So I always end my podcast with 3 action items, 3 takeaways for our listeners. So I think this episode is going to be dedicated to my beauty professional that's maybe a solopreneur that does lashes, brows, spray tan, who has a dream of opening their own location. With that in mind, let's imagine that client, that listener. What 3 things would you tell them to do to move things forward to get closer to their own physical brick-and-mortar location?
So beautiful. The 3 things I would share to that passionate solopreneur who's ready to spread her wings and open up her own space where she gets to put her own logo on the door and open it up every day and know that she created it, would be first to create a vision board. It really is a powerful thing, and it can look however you want it. I love to do posters with magazine cutouts. You can print things off Pinterest or do it digitally. But really get into the creativity, the vision, the visual, the colorful of what feelings and emotions you want to evoke. What are the things that you want to see and feel in this space that you are manifesting?
That's beautiful.
That would be step one. So it's really the creative part.
Mm-hmm.
I would get very tactical, practical as well. And I would make a list of exactly what, exactly where. What is your wish list? What are your parameters, the way I described, so that when I got on that call and had that opportunity, I could speak to exactly what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And it's okay if there are some areas where you're not 100% sure what you want, but as much as you can, the same way when I go to a restaurant, I order exactly what I want. We can do the same thing, get really tactical, practical, and write it down, put it out there. My third piece of homework or action item would be to start talking about it to anyone where it feels inspired, and just mentioning that you're thinking about opening up a space, just mentioning that you're looking for XYZ. And again, I have goosebumps because I just remember that when we speak it out into existence, when we put it on paper, when we put it on a vision board, and we stay open-hearted, the doors and the opportunities will fly open in our favor.
Manifestation. Yes, that's going to be another episode.
Oh, that's a good one.
We think it. We think it. We imagine it. Creating the vision board makes that, that feeling, that thought, that idea, something like really tangible, and then making a list, writing kind of what the plan looks like and concretizing it in writing, and then speaking the word into existence is so incredibly powerful. Mm-hmm. And you're a testament to it. And frankly, I'm a testament to that as well. So thank you, Melissa, so much for joining us today on Glow Up Boss. And I'm so excited. I can't wait to see where the future takes you. I know you're going to do amazing things. You've already done amazing things, and you've inspired me and so many people today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.